Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, أعزائي المشاهدين. شكرا لمتابعتكم. I switch between Arabic and English so that everybody can follow us. I'm very honored today to have with us today Mr. Olet, Mr. Robert-Falcon Oulette, who is a candidate for the mayor of the city of Winnipeg. Today is October 18, 2022. With the idea behind it, as we've spoken in earlier shows and episodes, is to introduce our community at large, the Muslim community, the Arab community, to our honorable candidates, and to hear from them what's their plan, what's their agenda, to have them to introduce to us. Of course, Mr. Oulette is not a stranger to the community. We've seen him in many of our gatherings and dinners and functions as well, and we're very thankful to his participation. And many of us know who he is and his background. So without further ado, we will start. Mr. Oulette, good afternoon. Thanks for being here with us today.
Hey, assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you.
أنا اسمي Robert-Falcon OUELLETTE. I'm from Red Pheasant Cree Nation, which is in Saskatchewan, and it's a beautiful place in Saskatchewan Hills, Rolling Hills. I've been in Winnipeg since 2010. I have a PhD, two master's degrees. I have 5 beautiful children, and I was a mayoral candidate in 2014. In 2015, I was elected as a member of Parliament for Winnipeg Centre, where I served as the chair of the national and very first Indigenous caucus, but also was on the Finance Committee, the Health Committee, helping to establish budgets and health priorities for Canadians. And finally, I was the chair of the Human Trafficking Caucus, and I was working on a number of other initiatives while I was there. And anything else? Oh, I was in the military for 27 years. I forgot about that.
Yes, I see that, yes.
Quite a long time.
And yet you look like you're 35 years old for some somehow.
Thanks very much. Well, it's the lighting here in the Tim Hortons. I'm enjoying a good cup of Tim Hortons. Very Canadian.
Very Canadian, yes, that's true. Yeah. And actually, in my travels, I've seen it. There's Tim Hortons right now in Dubai and other countries in the world, which is just amazing. It's amazing.
Everyone loves coffee.
I think so. There's something in the coffee. I'm not going to make any comments publicly, but there's something in the coffee that's very delicious and, in a way, in a legal way, addictive. That's what it is.
It's always good. It's always good.
Awesome. So, what attracted you to the politics, Mr. Oulette?
It's an interesting story. When I came to live in Winnipeg, I was a prof at the University of Manitoba, and I'm an anthropologist. So I study civilizations and society. And I was studying the city of Winnipeg, and I was trying to understand what makes the city tick. And I was talking to a friend about some of my findings and what I discovered, and he said, well, go do something about it. Go and run in the election, run for mayor. And I was like, wow, that's quite the daunting task. So I actually sent out an email to 100 people that I knew, and I asked them if they thought it was a good idea or a bad idea. And I had about 50 people say it was a terrible idea, that it would open up a lot of racism and issues within our city. And I had 47 that said, you should do it, but you won't win. And I had 3 people that said, it's a great idea, and you might win. It'd be good to have a good debate. And so off to the races we went, and in the end I was this the dark horse, they call it, someone that they counted out many times, and I just kept kind of clawing back and doing a lot of hard work on policy, writing some very deep policy. Politicians generally are very superficial, I find. They don't like speaking in full sentences, and so I was writing some very well-researched policy issues and good citations and well thought out. And that's what people thought. And then I did quite well in the election, so it was a lot of fun.
Great, that's good training for this time.
Well, being able to write and think deeply is good training for anything.
Yeah, that's true. It must have been a very stressful experience as well.
There were times when I was very tired, close to burnout a couple of times.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot and kept going. Never give up.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you have a great background in military and politics. As you mentioned, also in running for mayor previously. So in your experience, from what experience you think you can bring in to this role, to complement the role of a mayor right now? You've been before an MP. How does this gonna help in your new role, if you will?
Well, I think what I bring with me is a lot of leadership experience. In the military, I've studied leadership, and I've seen good and I've seen some terrible leadership. I've seen some amazing leaders that you want to follow anywhere in the world and do anything for your comrades and your mates, and the men and women you serve with. But also learning from those who were not very good leaders and seeing what it is that they were doing wrong, and so learning how to motivate people in a good way, how to build up a team. And so this was something that I think I would be able to bring to the city of Winnipeg, but also now, since I served as a member of parliament, having a wealth of experience at the federal level, seeing how the political infrastructure actually works at the federal, provincial, municipal, even the school board level a little bit farther down, and how there's actually a lack of coordination. And so taking the time to think about these issues deeply, it gives you the opportunity of then saying, well, this is how the system could function much better and how we could actually get the results that we need. A lot of politicians, I think, go into politics thinking, it's quite easy, just operate in the municipal level and have little conversations. But all these systems at the federal, provincial, municipal, at all levels actually operate while independently. They also interact with each other. And people have not quite figured out, a lot of politicians don't know how to pull levers and which buttons to push at the right time to get things that need to get done. To make things happen. And it took me, I think, thinking about being in federal politics about 2 years to adequately understand which levers to push. And by the time after the second 2 years of my final mandate there as MP or member of parliament, I was able then to, really get some good legislation through the House, unanimous consent, to convince my own government, my own side to promote some of this legislation and get some funds off to the people in the community. And it was very rewarding and worthwhile because I could see the results of the efforts of the people who I was working with, and I was able to use their efforts to get the things that people needed in Winnipeg Center and in Winnipeg, in Manitoba.
Wonderful. So let's talk about that more in details, if you may. We live in Winnipeg, and anyone who lives in Winnipeg, we know that the biggest problem we have is our potholes in streets and the crime rate. That's the homeless population that we need to look after. These are real things that we face every day. We love the city. We take pride in it, but we don't like anybody making any comments about our potholes or our streets. And it's something that we all think it has to be changed, has to be done. Not every 2 years that we have to redo it over and over again. How do you? I just mentioned three common problems we face: the high crime rate, our dear but homeless population that we need to look after, but we need to create programs for, and also the conditions of our commuting, our streets, and so on. How do you? These three problems, I'm just throwing it at you. How do you see? What agendas do you think you have that you might battle these issues with?
Yes, thanks for the question. So when we started the campaign, we talked about homelessness, mental health, and addictions as being the top three priorities that we need to deal with in the city of Winnipeg. The addictions issue actually leads to more crime within the city, and then it actually costs us a lot more money because we have to hire more police officers to deal with it. We also then have to have firefighters and paramedics dealing with these issues. It leads to the issue where people don't want to get on the buses. Even our bus drivers in the city of Winnipeg don't want to be in the buses sometimes because they find it unsafe. And this means that instead of spending money on our children and other civic infrastructure, we're spending it on issues which should have been dealt with far earlier. In 2014, when I ran for mayor, I talked about homelessness, and everyone who was a politician, though, said, yes, it's important, and they all said yes, and they all checked that box and said, we're going to do something about it. But then what happened in reality is social groups, politicians, often end up talking to the people that they like talking to, and they go back to their regular social groups. Instead of spending time where it's hard, they go where it's easy. And this is sometimes a good thing to do. You want to solve that math problem the easiest way possible. But there are such issues in society that do not have an easy solution, and you have to grind away at it day after day, never giving up. And we have had politicians that do not do that. They focus on trying to find easy things to do and focus on groups that already are doing quite well. So they'll go speak with the business people, ignoring the issues that actually impact the business people in profound ways. So for instance, if people are afraid to go downtown, then then how does a business stay afloat in the downtown core if you're offering services? It's very hard. So businesses move out of the core, and it makes the city feel unsafe. So what we want to do is make sure we deal with the treatment, so people get addictions treatment, treat it as a healthcare crisis, and make sure that there are healthcare professionals involved. The policing, while it's easy to talk about, they've already been doing this for over decades and decades. For 20 years, 30 years now, we've been talking about getting more police officers. It hasn't solved the issue. You could not police your way out of a homeless issue in Canada, nor in the Western world. So you actually need to have healthcare. You need to make sure all options are on the table to look at this, and making sure that there's recovery services. So someone, when they're having a challenging time at 2 o'clock in the morning, they have someone to call, a friend, someone that they can rely on to help them, not getting an appointment 2 weeks later when you could meet a healthcare professional and say, you can have that appointment, but actually right away. And to make sure these services are immediately available. I heard today, I was with a group of Indigenous youth, and apparently some of the wait times are up to 2 years now for addictions treatment. Right. So that means these people are out in our bus shelters, in the streets, not getting the treatment they need. And what a lot of the other politicians are saying is they want to talk to the province before they do anything. Well, I think time has come to an end where we can just simply say we're going to talk to the province. We need to actually deal with it. And if the province doesn't want to help, then the city needs to be prepared to show leadership, courage, and go it alone to make sure people get the help that they need right away, because it's impacting the quality of life of every citizen. I know so many parents that don't want their children to go out at night because they feel it is too dangerous and not safe enough. Women do not want to be out at night in certain areas of the city. And that is not what a Canadian city should look like. A Canadian city should not be an American inner city. It should be a beautiful, thriving community, because we are a very, very wealthy nation based on the ideas of equality and good government.
That's great. I agree with you. And actually, I do have my office in downtown, and one of the things we tend to do the last few years, not COVID excluded, is when we have female workers who are working late, we end up trying to go down with them for support and things like that. It's
to walk them to their car. I think that sounds like a lot of work, and that shouldn't happen. You should be able to go anywhere in the city at 2 o'clock in the morning without fear of molestation or violence.
Yeah, I agree. So on the point of downtown, what do you propose that we should do, or we will do, to try and, especially post-COVID, where people are working from home and businesses seem to have adopted some of that strategies? How do you propose on reviving downtown, making the downtown Winnipeg the same as major cities in Canada, where the downtown is a place of pride? We bring our visitors to. What are the challenges? What do you propose to do?
Well, there is such an interesting thing going on in our city, and I have these TikTok videos where I ask, "Did you know?" And did you know that 20% of our downtown is a vacant lot, a parking lot, and 20% of that is actually owned by government? These things are held by land developers and speculators who hold on to them, not using them to their full value, and it's costing the community space that they could have affordable housing, businesses, and also creating a place which is actually unsafe, because a place which is just a parking lot is generally people aren't hanging out in, and if there's only one person hanging out on the street, people don't like being around that. They want to go somewhere where there are actual people, because that feels safer, because there's eyes on the street, and it's a principle of urban design. And so what I'm proposing is that we actually tax those as if they're a 4-story building to generate $65 million in revenue. And this revenue then can be used to fund all these housing projects, making sure that we have good infrastructure, like making sure that we have no potholes in our streets, that we have good urban transportation, public transit, and we have other amenities for our children. making sure that we invest in things which are extremely important. Sorry, I'm at the Tim Hortons, and I guess there's a sound.
Yeah, someone's
in the
really
background.
someone.
I think they're cooking some donuts, and it looked like it was burning.
Oh,
There's a lot of steam over here.
no worries, no, we don't see it.
The
That's
life
fine.
of a politician hanging out in a Tim Hortons in Canada.
That's, you know, that's as close to the people as you can get. So that's a good thing, actually.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, please.
No, but just, what I actually see, if I actually had to do the downtown, is making sure there's actual arts and culture, making sure there's more sharing in public space, getting people downtown where they feel safe, making sure that there's activities which are affordable for families, that they can come down there, and just getting people rubbing shoulders together. We live actually often in a very segregated city. People don't realize this, but a lot of people spend a lot of time with their own social groups, and we don't mix as much as we should in our city. We have Indigenous peoples hanging out with Indigenous peoples, European peoples, people of European heritage, often hanging out with people of European heritage, Muslims with Muslims, and the Chinese hanging out with the Chinese. And while this is fun to be in our social groups, the problem is it makes it so it's very hard to share information, understanding, and sharing information to actually build a better society for us all. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to live in a segregated city. We want to live in a city where we're all equally able to partake and succeed equally together.
Awesome. And on the same topic, I know this is not one of the questions we discussed earlier, but on the same topic, is there any, do you envision any maybe incentives to bring in people into the businesses and into downtown, like some programs, because what I'm seeing, or what we're seeing, many of us are seeing, is that businesses seems to be, and offices as well, seems to be departed or have departed from downtown. Some of them, and went some to Bridgewater, some went to other areas where they feel, I don't know,
Safer.
maybe closer to safer. Yeah, exactly. Is there anything that you can see in the next few years when you're and hopefully when you're mayor, if you're elected, that you can bring some programs and incentives for businesses to come back to downtown?
Of course, I think there's actually some very important ones. One is the level of taxation for people who open businesses in the downtown core, to make sure that there is an incentive to doing so. I think this would be extremely important because, I think we have to recognize that the downtown climate is a little bit more difficult, and we have to give people the opportunity of taking a risk to open a business and rewarding them taking that risk, giving the opportunity to them to succeed. And once they do succeed, then we can celebrate and help someone else. And so I don't think we do that enough in our city. Think about Portage Place Mall as an example.
Right.
It's empty right now. People often don't go. There are probably about 70% of the storefronts in Portage Place Mall are empty right now. We should be trying to let small businesses open, something there to try out for at a very low cost, and then if they succeed, then we can talk about maybe changing the either taxation or how much they cost to rent the space, but giving them the opportunity to at least try an idea to see if it can work. Because if they succeed, then we all benefit. If they don't succeed, well, let's give them an opportunity to try something else. But if we don't try, we never can succeed, right?
Right, I agree. Robert, what other issues that you would like to stand for in your role as the mayor of the city of Winnipeg?
If I could stand for some issues as the city of Winnipeg, it'd actually be putting in place a child-friendly city policy. And this is extremely important to me, as much as the homelessness, mental health, and addictions are important. Dealing with the problems of today, I think it's also important to prepare for the future. And so what I'd like to do is focus on thinking about making sure all the city policies are looked at through the eyes of our children and our youth, to make sure that they have the tools necessary to succeed, making sure we have good recreation centers, making sure that they're well funded, making sure that our girls and our boys can access sports and things to do so that it's positive, so they can grow. But a lot of this is just about really thinking about the long-term future, because just during the summer, there were 15-year-old boys that had killed a number of people in the downtown core. In 2014, when I proposed the same policy, If we had put this in place, maybe that would not have occurred, because they were only 8 and 7 years old at the time. So these are ideas which I think their time has come. This is a UNICEF model type city. Think about camps, summer camps as an example.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They're often very expensive. You have 2-3 children, you can spend up to $500 or $1,000, depending on the number of children you have, on a summer camp for 1 week. That's very expensive, and I think it needs to be more affordable, so we have our children doing positive things, especially in the summer, so they don't have learning loss, so they can learn more, so that they can have different experiences, and then take those experiences back to school, back to meet with their comrades, their young mates in school, and then use that later on in life. And we know that education is something which is accumulative. You add to it, but there is also things called learning loss, which occurs during the summer months. And so the city has a role in making sure our children can be successful, helping parents be successful. And those summer camps, we could have basketball, we could be having soccer, language camps, we could be, Arabic, we could be learning Tagalog, we could be learning, indigenous language, Michif, Cree, or French, just pratiquer des choses différentes, practicing different things, and it could be much more beneficial to us in the long term as a city, and we produce a better outcome. But that takes, as I said before, when we started the conversation, it takes to think, forward thinking. It has to have a long-term arc in the way we think about these issues impacting our city. And a lot of politicians think very, very short term. If I could be the leader of the city, I also want to think about succession planning. I don't want to be having the city all of a sudden doing something well for 4 years, and then we elect a new leader in 4 or 8 years, and then they're going off on a new tangent, which doesn't complement what was already done and accomplished before. We need to add to what it is we're doing and continually build towards better and stronger things in our society. And this is important for the mayor to take a role in developing the next generation of leadership within the city, and even field politicians to make sure the people we develop are there for the right reasons.
Robert, I can't agree more with you. I sat on a few boards in my lifetime, and the worst thing that would happen is into a new position or a new board comes in any office, and we have to start from scratch. There's no continuation of what has been done before. There's no cooperation between the elected previous board and the new one, and that's happened sometimes with our different government levels, whether municipal or provincial or federal even. So I agree with you. I very much agree with that strategy. It's a very effective, unproductive strategy to leave behind when or if you leave office. That is, you might want to re-elect again. So I think our audience would like to know more about yourself. You mentioned that you're a family man with 5 children, I think, right?
Yes, of course, yeah.
So how are you going to balance between being so busy with politics, especially with all these issues you're going to tackle, and family life, life in general?
It's very hard as a politician. I am also a workaholic. I love working hard. But at the end of the day, you do have to make time for your children and make sure that they feel supported and cared for, and, involve them as well in what you're doing. It's, make this the family affair. But if, that means taking time to continue playing music. We play music at home. My wife plays the piano. My children play brass instruments, and we spend a lot of time making music together, and so that's a lot of fun. And just continuing to spend time around the dinner table, taking at least one moment every day to get together. I also like taking my sons to cadets. They're in the cadet youth program. Yes, of course. Nice. I was a cadet as a young person, and all my 3 sons are doing that today. My daughter's also doing the very young cadets, Navy cadets. Nice. And I, as someone who's in the military, I'm very supportive of them learning about leadership and different skills, and being willing to try different things with their lives. And I think it's just fun.
Yeah, I all my 3 boys were in the Air Cadets. Were amazing experience, discipline and fun. It was a nice combination.
Lots of discipline.
Yeah, my kids get to fly. They were in a plane So that means amazing experience, shooting, flying, discipline, socializing.
Yeah.
Wonderful experience. So do you have any other commitments regarding your candidacy?
What I want people to think about if concerning this election is how important it is. Because every time we have an election in the city of Winnipeg, it's very easy for politicians to promise some very superficial things with not much deep thought. But then, as I said before, they get involved in just checking a box and they make a funding announcement, and then they go focus on the things which are actually important to them. So what I would encourage citizens to do is to think about the city that they really want, to look at all the programs that are currently in offer, and then to vote for me. Because I actually think we have the best plan. And to actually elect someone who would be different, who's not going to be their usual old politician who has been worn out and just trying out like elect someone who is actually much stronger and who's willing to actually try different things to try and make the city a better place, and who's not going to be turned off by hanging out even with the homeless. We had a debate at Siloam Mission, which is the homeless shelter in the city. All of the major candidates did not show up. And that's the group that's in the most need. And we're talking about homelessness in this election time and time again, yet the major candidates could not take the time to come speak with the homeless. How are you going to solve the homeless issue if you can't even take the time to let them hear you speak during an election? This, I think, is very telling of what goes on in politics. People like to associate with those things which are easy. But if we want to actually make our city a better place, you're going to have to go where it's hard. The firefighter doesn't go where there's no fire. They're supposed to go towards the fire.
Makes sense. That's a good point. That's a very good point. So,
and I will actually, I'll leave you with one final thing. Actually, I know people think I'm just all about the homelessness, mental health, and addictions. It's extremely important, but we're also going to deal with the potholes. We're also going to make sure that public services are well done. We're not going to let the streets not be plowed, and that we're going to make sure that the sidewalks are done well, that city services function. These are all the basic essential services of a city, and we're going to make sure there are no potholes. But we're also going to deal with these larger issues which impact everyone.
And the reason why the potholes are so visible because we use them. We use the roads and we see them, but when the problem is hidden, like the issue with addiction and so on, it affects us deeply, but it doesn't affect. We don't see it as it is hidden behind the things instead. So one last thought, and you mentioned a very good point. You want to listen to the people when you're elected. You want to hear what they have to say, what problems and what issues they might have, and even what good comments. How do you propose to do that? Is there going to be an open forum, or is going to be? How do the people communicate with you when you're in mayor?
Well, when I was the MP, I would have meet and greets. I would always never turn anyone away from my office. I know sometimes it creates a lot of work for me, but at the end of the day, if people need to meet with the mayor, I will always meet with them and never turn anyone away. I held a lot of town halls with people to make sure I could have their full opinion on various issues, and I attended those town halls myself. Because if you can't understand what people want, how can you actually find the solutions to the problems impacting our city and our society?
Great. Robert, would you like to say or to give a word for encourage people to go to early elections? What would you say to them?
Obviously, go and vote early. But the election is October 26th, and I think it's extremely important that people do exercise that right to vote. Because if you don't go out and vote, someone else will, and then they will elect old-style politicians that continue just to check the box without really doing very much, and then you won't get the change that we actually need in our city. And I had something an elder told me, Indigenous elder. He said, "Your word is your honor. Your word is the people, and the people are citizens of the city of Winnipeg. It's you." And at the end of the day, I hold that truth to be to the highest I possibly can, and will try and follow it every time I speak. Make sure I speak from the heart, and make sure I accomplish everything that I've been told that I should do by the people.
Robert, thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy campaign, and I know your time is very limited. Yet you found the time to speak with us, with our audience, with our community at large, Muslim and Arab community. We thank you for your time, and we also thank you for trying your best always to attend our functions. We've noticed you, and we appreciate you, and we're honored for your presence always. And we wish you all the best. It's great, informative interview that we have with you. I can't thank you enough for sharing your family information, your political agenda, your background. It's been great.
شكرا. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. عفوا, and thanks again. Much
عفوا.
appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen,
Inshallah, we will meet again.
Inshallah, I look forward to it. Thanks very much. And that would be the end of our interview. And thanks everyone for following us and watching this interview with Mr. Robert-Falcon, oulette.